You know those movies you used to watch as a kid that feel like something your mind made up in a fever dream?
You can't sit around waiting for the path to glory.
I can't recall exactly how my fate intertwined with that of the 2002 Disney film The Country Bears. Perhaps it was a movie my sisters and I had a passing interest in from all the advertisements on various Disney DVDs at the time. Or it was just one of those movies that materialized in your collection even though, for the life of you, you can never recall actually buying it anywhere. Or, your parents bought it because they had money, you get it. Or maybe it was the Movie Surfers segment way back when. After all, if you can't rely on the Movie Surfers for quality endorsement, who can you rely on?
I thought The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 was incredible.
It was great.
It was awesome.
yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
Either way, it was definitely one of those early DVDs that was in constant circulation at Casa Film Freak. And looking back on it, it's not particularly hard to see why.
That was bad.
The Country Bears, quite frankly, is a movie that defies all movie-making sense. The concept? An adaptation of a semi-popular 15-minute Disney theme park sit-down attraction whose entire novelty is old country songs sung by robot bears. The premise? What if said robotic bears were actually anthropomorphic bears who were in a hit band that reunite in order to stop an evil banker from demolishing their old theater? The execution? A film jam-packed with cameos from various artists, contemporary and retro, who all pay reverence to a fictional band of bears whose music apparently changed the industry as we know it. And also, anthropomorphic bears are just an accepted fact by society at large. Sometimes.
The Rangers use this to track you.
Why were they tracking him down? They're intelligent in this universe. They have jobs. Do they round them up like in Planet of the Apes? What is happening? All in all, you get an utterly baffling movie that was probably doomed to failure for how baffling it truly is. I mean, of all the Disney theme park attractions they could pick from, the Country Bear Jamboree would definitely be far from the first choice for a lot of fans. Not to say that the Jamboree never had any fans.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
But compared to future releases like Pirates of the Caribbean or The Haunted Mansion, which are both considered cream of the crop in terms of Disney rides, at least for some people,
Pirates is mid!
It's a wonder why exactly they chose to adapt this before either of those. Ultimately, when the film released in the summer of 2002, critics would tear it apart for how all over the place it truly was, praising the technical aspects but heavily criticizing the story and characters. Audience response wasn't much kinder, with the film only grossing a measly $18 million against a $35 million budget.
Oh, like that's gonna help.
And so, though it would eventually fare a little better on the home media market, The Country Bears would fade into obscurity due to its critical and commercial apathy, and any talks of a sequel were quietly forgotten. Except for one Wikipedia editor who was feeling a little saucy with this entry. Naturally, the reputation this movie has built over the years is one of steady mockery, where many an internet personality has poked fun at its questionable decisions.
Oh no! Country Bear Hall has been crushed!
Enough so that long after we donated our old DVD in an effort to make some space, I couldn't help but wonder if the movie was quite as bafflingly bad as I remembered it to be. Thankfully, with the advent of Disney Plus and its almost masochistic dedication to including even the most obscure movie from the company's sordid past, I was able to sit down and revisit The Country Bears sometime last year, along with my wife, who had never seen it beyond the various memes.
This is not over! Bears!
So, after at least a decade of a country bear-free life, what was my renewed reaction? Well, that it's actually kinda good?
You think he's not actually serious?
Okay, good might be pushing it if you're arguing for objectivity. But when I look at this movie as a whole, what it was trying to do and how it tried to do it, I can't really say it failed in either aspect. I mean, it wanted to tell a story about anthropomorphic bears getting a band of anthropomorphic bears back together, and it did that. By God, it did that. Everything else is just kind of the extra flavoring to an unconventional but arguably still well-made blueberry pie.
When I'm upset, I bake. Please help yourself.
I guess I should maybe get a little more detailed on my personal history with the source material before I go any further, huh?
If that helps you.
I didn't visit Disneyland much when I was a little kid, being poor and all, but I did have a few VHS tapes set in the classic park that we would frequently watch to get a bit of that contact high, which was the next best thing before YouTube and POV ride videos came around. It's like I'm actually there. Two of these tapes involved the Country Bear Jamboree to at least some degree, both featuring the classic song, The Great Outdoors, which has since become the first thing I always think of whenever someone inevitably brings them up.
Ain't nothing like the great outdoors to ease your soul. Ain't nothing like the great outdoors to keep you from growing old.
The one memory I have about sitting through the actual attraction itself involves this little number too, along with some scattered recollection of a few of the other animatronics. But a testament to how much I really knew about the CBJ, as all the cool kids call it, is that this song didn't even come from the original version of the attraction. Apparently, the version they had at Disneyland when I was a kid was called the Country Bear Vacation Hoedown, which was only a temporary overlay in Florida. All this is to say that my affection for the original CBJ, even back when this movie came out, was pretty much nil. To the point where I had no idea the Country Bears movie was even based off the Country Bear Jamboree. And perhaps it's for this reason I can forgive the movie's blatant omission of such classic characters as Buff, Max, Melvin, Sammy, Bunny, Bubbles, Beulah, Terrence, Ernest, and the effervescent baby Oscar who wonders when he can be allowed off stage to enjoy his ever-fleeting childhood. But ultimately, sticking with at least 4 of the 5 bears from the main 5 Bears Rugs band was probably the most practical decision. And with the inclusion of other characters like Henry, Trixie, or Big Al, they might have planned on saving some of the others for a potential sequel. Would that fate had been kinder. I mean, they also dropped some references to the other characters in at least one scene, so there you go.
There's Flatten Scruggs, Living Lips McGraw, Gomer. Jimi Hendrix opened here for Vanilla Fudge.
But honestly, even if you're the world's biggest CBJ superfan,
Dozens!
There's only so much potential you can squeeze out for a movie plotline. So anyone would have had their hands full trying to make it appeal to a vast audience. So how do you try and make a relatively obscure band of bears appealing to the coveted movie-going family market? Well, I'd posit 2 solutions. First of which is, you get the motherfrickin' Jim Henson Creature Shop to do your creature suits for you.
Honey, I'm home.
Like I said before, much of the praise for this movie, even from those who weren't particularly fond of it, was directed towards the bear suits designed by Jim Henson's Creature Shop, a special effects company who hopefully needs no introduction from me, but specializes in advanced puppeteering and visual effects work, both for Muppet and Jim Henson-related movies and shows, and all across the industry at large. Their most recent work including visual effects for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, and the animatronics for Five Nights at Freddy's. By this point, they'd more than proven their mettle in creating convincing and lifelike animatronic puppets with their work on the Dinosaurs TV show a decade prior. But the bear suits in Country Bears show just how much they'd advanced in only a decade, where there's no obvious joints that betray where the sleeves end and the body begins. And the mouth and eye movement are convincing enough to look real, without veering too hard into the uncanny valley. It also kinda took me aback on a recent rewatch that the suits could actually blink too. A level of polish you might not otherwise think about, considering some of their more famous Muppet cousins.
I'll be watching you, John Dorian, and guess what? My eyes never close.
The second solution to draw in that family crowd is by appealing to the parents' sense of nostalgia by overflowing the movie with some of the most recognizable musical talent of the last 30 years. I'm talking Willie Nelson, John Hyatt, Queen Latifah, Brian Setzer, Don Wuss, Bonnie Raitt, Don Henley, Exhibit? Wycliffe John? Elton John?
That guy looks a lot like Elton John.
Nah, Elton John's taller.
Heck, why don't you throw in a couple newcomers the kids will recognize, like, that one lady who did the song for Princess Diaries, that one, and,
Oh my gosh, you're the Country Bears.
Okay, I know this person is meant to be someone. The movie wouldn't draw so much attention to her otherwise. Hold on. Okay, Jennifer Page, American singer best known for pop hit Crush. Oh, you mean that one song that... no, that's Paramore.
You guys inspired me to go after my dream to become a famous singer.
I mean, she's not nobody. She's had a few hits, like,
Well, I kind of got my own arrangement. Sometimes you just got to kick it into gear.
I have no idea who this is.
All of this talent doesn't, and didn't, guarantee success. But featuring them goes a long way into the steadfast dedication this movie had to building up a legacy around the Country Bears as a supposed country rock band that took the nation by storm for a good couple of decades. A bit that the movie holds on to even in the promotional and behind-the-scenes material, much to my own chagrin. Seriously, it's kind of hard trying to look up how exactly this movie was made, when everything I can find from Disney Channel movie server promotions to DVD mockumentaries all refuse to break character.
In the following years, the Bears rode a wave of success, even inspiring a television cartoon and a theme park attraction.
Now wait just a minute! I thought I might have better luck if I looked at some of the bonus features on the DVD. But, like I said, we had long since donated our copy, and the only thing Disney Plus offers in the way of bonus materials is a trailer. You remember the first couple months of Disney Plus where they had actual bonus features in the extras section? Wasn't that a cock tease? So, what am I supposed to do in this situation? Am I just gonna go on Amazon and get the only copy they have in stock? Oh, you bet your anthropomorphic ass I did!
Ooh, version française incluse.
Unfortunately, this ended up being another loose end. As, again, the DVD also continues the bit of the Country Bears being an actual band from the... even in clips where the Superformers are obviously just riffing or otherwise dead.
She-bears were attracted to Tennessee like bees to honey.
She-bears? You mean sows? Trivia note, a female bear is called a sow. Fortunately, there is one person who worked on the movie who was given some insight into its actual production more than a few times. The facial assistant for Big Al and Trixie, Terri Hardin. Hardin is both an accomplished puppeteer for the Jim Henson Company and Imagineer for multiple Disney theme parks across the world. So her enthusiasm for a movie based on the Country Bears was palpable, as she mentions both on a personal blog and in an interview she did with Kevin Perjurer of Defunctland.
I was discovered by Jim Henson in 1982, but we didn't really get to work until 1989. And I became a member of the Jim Henson Company, and I've been a member with them to this day. And the way that works is that you kind of sit and go about your life, and then when they have a project they think you might be good for, they call you in to audition.
She mentioned both in the blog and during the interview that Disney wasn't quite as faithful in the making of this movie as many on the crew were, originally opting to have the Superformers mimic pre-recorded scratch tracks rather than let them perform scratch themselves as they typically did, and that once the internet caught wind of the movie and started mocking it, they got cold feet and decided to add more of a human element.
The production started reading the internet, and people on the internet started blasting the movie before they saw it, which is always sad because then Disney got all weird and scared, and they pulled back a lot of the advertising they were going to do for Country Bears.
This would honestly explain some of the more questionable subplots in the film, and possibly the emphasis on the human performers during some of the film's musical numbers. Apparently, the inclusion of the cop duo played by Diedrich Bader and Daryl Mitchell was the biggest offender of this shift in focus, which, given how they kind of disappear from the movie entirely at some point, makes a lot of sense.
Good kid. He's a keeper. Yeah.
This might also explain some of the editing choices as well, like this scene with Christopher Walken's banker character that appears to have been cut in two, with him initially talking to the demolition guy taking place somewhere near the end of the movie, and when he shuffles off to talk to Big Al happening sometime near the beginning. This is purely speculation on my part, because, again, I had very little to work with. But it seems like a good chunk of the movie was found in the edit once Disney started to lose confidence in it. And it's kind of a shame they did lose confidence because, again, while I hesitate to say that it's good, it's pretty darn good for what it is.
Bear power! Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I keep waffling around it, so let me just cut to the chase. I think this movie's reputation has kinda gotten away from the actual movie itself. Yes, it's weird. Yes, the setting where anthropomorphic bears aren't really questioned outside that one kid who played Hogarth and Iron Giant makes no sense.
Does he have any distinguishing marks, something that we can recognize him by?
Yeah, he's got thick brown hair all over his body.
But as you watch the movie, you get the impression that the people who made it are both well aware of that fact and are in on the joke.
His name is Barry.
B-A-R.
No, it's B-E-A-R, like in the German spelling of the name.
They still more or less play certain cliched tropes and character moments pretty straight. But that's also kind of the charm in a movie like this. If you're gonna tell a story about an anthropomorphic band of bears putting aside their differences for a common cause, you might as well play it as straight as possible. The comedy will naturally follow from how ridiculously earnest you're being. Heck, even the added stuff with the cops is pretty frickin' entertaining thanks to the chemistry between Mitchell and Bader, and their genuine earnestness in trying to be more competent than they really are.
Suspicious activity at 2 o'clock.
How could you possibly know that?
Honestly, the best way I can describe this movie is that it's probably one of the better made Muppet movies that the Muppets never made. A lot of the energy and plot beats are there. A world where funny anthropomorphic animals exist and remain largely unquestioned by the general populace. A colorful and exaggerated band of misfits that get into fittingly exaggerated shenanigans. And an over-the-top human antagonist to give them all a conflict they have to overcome. And who is basically a living Muppet in his own right.
That day is tonight!
This movie has Muppet DNA coursing through its veins regardless of the Jim Henson Company's involvement. To the point where I can't even rightfully say it's one of the better made Muppet movies the Muppets never made. Because they did make it 8 years later.
Tex Richmond has a secret plan to tear down the theater and drill for oil.
What? The only way to save the studio is to raise $10 million.
I'm far from the first person to point it out. Kevin Perger even does it in the aforementioned interview with Terri Hardin. But much of the plot present in The Country Bears is almost beat for beat repeated in the Muppets revival movie nearly a decade after Bears was made. And probably why that movie succeeded where The Country Bears failed, is that, in the end, everyone knows the Muppets. You may not know all of them. Heck, you may not even like them. What the hell is wrong with you? But they're enough of a pop culture staple that even a family-going audience who had never seen a Muppet movie before might take a look at it and go, yeah, that looks like a fun way to spend an evening. Once again, at the risk of offending the die-hard CBJ superfans out there, who the hell is Zeb Zuber? However, I won't deny that there still is a charm to the Country Bears movie and how unapologetically earnest it is. It treats these characters from an e-ticket attraction a lot of younger people like myself may not have even heard of, and treats them with all the reverence of genuine rock stars. Sure, they may have drastically changed these characters to fit in with more rock and roll character types, like the egocentric frontrunner, the bumbling and easygoing one, the drunk one, the sensitive one, and the girl. But the way some of these musicians talk about the Bears, or the way Barry himself identifies with them because they encourage him to be different, it's just infectiously earnest. Especially when it would have been just as easy to lean in on the cynicism that popped up around the time the fledgling internet became aware of it. Or hell, just the flagrant cynicism that permeated the 2000s in general. And in that regard, I do kind of unironically admire this movie. There's a part of me that still hesitates to call it genuinely good, but it's starting to be usurped by that part of me that looks at it and thinks, well, it does what it sets out to do and it does it competently and entertainingly enough. Is that not the makings of a movie that can be considered good? And perhaps it's also that nostalgic part of me that I want to deny because I did watch this movie quite a bit when I was a kid, more so than I probably care to admit. And the almost kid-like dedication of treating the band like it was real is sort of like the fun you get from acting like Santa Claus is real to kids around Christmas time. With apologies to anyone who found out Santa isn't real through a video about the Country Bears. It also draws back to the Muppets and other Henson-adjacent productions, where even in bloopers, the puppeteers will refuse to break character regardless of any mishaps.
The grump needs... Shit. Sorry.
He said a bad word, $5. $5.
Gonna be a rich Muppet at the end of this day.
And watching all these mockumentaries and interviews for Country Bears, I couldn't help but be sucked into the hype myself. Especially with these plushies they apparently made for promotional material that I swear I never saw in stores once. I mean, I know they had those weird McDonald's toys, and even I had one, but I kinda wanna get one of those plushies now if I can find... What the... I don't exactly know what point I'm trying to make with this video. I guess I'm kinda losing a bit of confidence enough to find it in the edit too. How ironic. But I guess if there is a lesson that can be taken from this, it's that sometimes a movie can be just a little more than what its reputation makes it out to be. I was fully prepared to have a bad movie roast with my wife the first time I showed her this. And we did have plenty of fun laughing at some of the movie's more questionable moments.
The bus was stolen. It was that Thimble fella.
But I think I realized somewhere along the way that I wasn't really laughing at the movie. I was laughing with it. You can argue as to how effective it really is, even as a self-aware comedy. And I'm not gonna act like it's one of the best movies ever made or anything, even though I wouldn't exactly stop you from making that claim.
Why'd you break up with you?
Was it that sweater you're wearing?
But in the end, there's still an underlying earnestness to its bafflingly weird decisions. And if you can accept even a little bit of that madness, I think you'll find yourself having a pretty good time. If you have Disney Plus or are most likely mooching off your friends or family's account, then I'd say it's well worth a rewatch, or even a new discovery.
Well, folks, here's the good news. The count is in, and we saved Country Bear Hall!
They did it! They did it! They saved Country Bear Hall! They saved Country Bear Hall! Oh, happy day! They saved Country Bear! Oh, I don't think they saved Country Bear Hall.
Ain't nothing like the great outdoors, ease your soul. Ain't nothing like the great outdoors to keep you from growing old. If your mind's been hazy and you're feeling lazy and you're down on all fours, then join us bears and suck up some air in the great outdoors.